Today's podcast is for those of you who do not like the status quo, who are unsatisfied and have this gnawing idea in your head that there is so much more out there for you, for your business, for your career. And this is a podcast for those who are ready and willing to push the envelope of what's possible. If you're finally ready to say enough of the way I've been doing things and to begin to really step away from your business, to start working on your business, to stop being just another laborer in that cog and to start being the leader that your company needs, this is the podcast for you, because I am going to tell you about an incredible opportunity that's going to transform your life. I want you to come to Croatia with me and 2 other master coaches, and let's figure this thing out. Let's figure out things like revenue plateaus and constant turnover and inflation that just keeps eating into your profits and teams that are just underperforming no matter what you do. Let's dig into that. Let's dig in a setting that is so unlike anything you have ever seen before. It is going to blow your mind. We are going to be on zip lines and high-speed catamarans. We are going to be kayaking in the Adriatic Sea. We are going to be climbing and mountain biking and just getting into life. And do you know what happens when you're in a cafe overlooking the ocean, or you're at some pub in some cool place that you've never been before? Your mind is opened up and it is receptive. It is creative. It is firing on all cylinders. And when we work together and we collaborate with leaders from around the world, we are going to do incredible things. So if this sounds interesting to you, listen on to find out how you can become a part of our epic executive experience in Croatia this October. You, me, let's figure this thing out. Welcome to the SuperPumped Business Podcast, where passion, purpose, and profits collide. If you want to launch the kind of growth that changes lives from the bottom all the way to the top of your organization, this is the place. I'm Ben Walters, a serial entrepreneur, pastor, coach, and consultant. If you're ready to stop playing small and start building something extraordinary, let's get super pumped. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks, Ben. It's great to be here.
Glad to have you today. So this podcast is going to be a little bit different because we are, as you and I have talked about, launching something completely different and exciting, and wanted to share it with the listeners today. So you want to share a little bit about what we're cooking up and what we're offering up to our clients and guests?
Yeah, Ben, this is great. This is something that's innovative, something that we looked out there. We didn't see that anybody else was offering in the same kind of way that we're going to offer it. So I'm super pumped to be here and to share more about this, and maybe a little bit about how this idea came up. So in my work, I work with all kinds of clients. I say that I train teams and leaders to accomplish more than they ever imagined. And what that looks like for me is I'll do business consulting and team training, but also one-to-one coaching. And I continually find that the biggest breakthroughs come when we get ourselves just a little bit uncomfortable, right?
Uh-huh.
That's that learning zone that we hear about. So when we get ourselves a little bit uncomfortable, as happens with travel, then these breakthroughs come. And so you and I started talking years ago about how we might create an opportunity where we could kind of create that fertile ground for this growth and for these breakthroughs to happen. And so that's what we're talking about today, and I'm really excited to get into it.
Well, in full disclosure, we are first cousins, so
True.
We have been traveling together for many years, going back to vacations as kids, have a Supai hike down into the Grand Canyon with our families, but also then in college going to Austria and Germany and around kind of Western Europe. And then a few years later, we did an epic trip, which is part of what started the germination of this, clear back in 1998, going to Greece and the Balkans and a little brief stop in Italy. And so we've been doing this a while.
Yeah, we have. You could say that people can feel comfortable coming with us because we've done this the hard way. We've learned some lessons along the way. For example, you can't travel through Albania, so maybe you got to make a little side trip to Italy, and that became part of the adventure. But again, that's memorable. We learned a lot from that, and that's what this is really all about. So excited to talk more about that. Ben, tell us, or I'm curious for you to talk a little bit about. You just mentioned Havasupai, but we did an even more epic Grand Canyon adventure.
Yeah. So to give the listeners a little bit of backstory on this, Greg had this crazy idea when he turned 50 that he wanted to do a 50-mile rim to rim to rim Grand Canyon epic adventure, if you will, which if you think about that, rim to rim is hard on the Grand Canyon with the elevation change and just all the challenge that goes with that. But to go rim to rim is double the challenge. And then because the normal rim to rim is only 44 miles or 42, depending on which trails you take, Greg decided we're going to add an additional 6 miles.
While we're at it,
let's go big or go home, right?
Right.
So Greg called me with this idea, and it's one of those big ideas that at first you kind of recoil from. You're like, well, that's crazy. And I think when I think about this idea we're pitching of epic executive experience, that's the reaction of some people right off the bat. Oh, that's crazy to go and do a week of intense coaching and consulting and collaborating and adventures in somewhere maybe we've never been. But as I let it wash over me, I began to think, you know what? A lot of times as we age, we don't challenge ourselves in the way we should. And so I began to think, you know what? I think I can do this. And so then, like anything, you kind of put a game plan in place. And I know you were helpful having done some of that before, not the full 50, but where you said, okay, here's some things we need to do and kind of get working on. And that motivated me then to really start laying the groundwork for success. So, so we did it, and it was hard, but I'm a better person for it, and stronger and more engaged, excited.
Yeah,
all of that.
Absolutely. Rim to rim or anything like this is a reminder that we can do hard things. I think a lot of times we don't challenge ourselves to do hard things. It also, when you look back, and you mentioned a little bit about some of the prep work, this is another reminder that when we set our sights on something big, and then we put the steps in place to get there, it's more achievable than we thought. Right? To say you're going to go out and run 50 miles sounds preposterous, especially with all, the 20,000 feet of elevation gain that we did.
Right.
It's a lot. But that said, when you put the steps in place, when you have the training regimen, when you start doing all the other stuff that makes it possible, then it's way more achievable than you thought. And I mean, other than your one brief little moment up there on the South Rim, folks, when we went out, we had to, we had to engineer this a little bit differently because there was massive flooding going on the north side of the canyon. And so we engineered it. So actually we did multiple ascents. And so we were 30 miles in, and we were at the top of the South Rim again. We'd started there. We'd gone up the North Rim a little bit, come back to the South Rim, and Ben was starting to hit his wall. And
the 34-mile, 12-hour running wall.
Yeah, there's a big wall right there.
Yeah, it sure is. It's a tall one.
Yeah, we just come up the 5,000-foot wall. So Ben is sitting there. His clothes are scattered all over the place, and it looked like a yard sale was happening. And there were international tourist people from around the world, kind of wondering what the half-naked guy was doing, sprawled out on the park bench while he was getting some water and hydration. But hey, you had a choice, right? That, again, very teachable moment. You had a choice. You could have easily gotten on the bus back to the hotel and called it a day. You could have cashed it in and said, hey, I did 35 miles of the Grand Canyon, and nobody's going to look at you and say that was a failure. But instead, you dug deep, and together we made the trip back down, all the way back down, looped around, and then all the way back out. And we're much better for it.
Well, and you mentioned together, because I think that's a key thing, because I think if this was a solo endeavor, I most likely would have quit then. But our friend Chris was there to kind of motivate me, poke me a little bit, maybe tease me, get into my ego.
Maybe a little bit.
A little bit. So having that was important. But then I can remember, and you guys were laughing about this, but I was like, can you guys go fill my water? And you were like, oh, we're your lackeys, your manservants here. And but that was a help. And then to give a little bit more of the story, I had ordered my hiking poles on Amazon and had them shipped directly to Arizona to my dad's house. And when I got out there, this is poor planning. They were too short. So it was okay on the downhill, but on the uphill, it wasn't working. Or it was I should say the reverse of that. It was okay on the uphill, but not the downhill because of the length. And so, not to get too technical, but our friend Chris actually gave me his poles for the descent back down to the Colorado River. And that was critical. And so when I think about this in a bigger business context, I think there are so many times where if we're just out there alone doing our business or our organization ourselves, it's easy to quit or get kind of stuck and level out. Whereas when we have folks there who are encouraging us or maybe poking us a little bit and making us a little uncomfortable or lending us expertise or skills that they've gathered along the way or filling our water, that's how you make it all the way. And so that's one of the things that I think is exciting about just what we do as coaches and consultants, but also what this epic executive experience can do for folks is it's going to give them that layer of community and support to get to that next level. So
yeah, absolutely. So we've already mentioned the power in travel and the power in getting a little bit uncomfortable. There's also the power of working in a group. I've led trips like this all around the world. I've done it all across the United States, the Caribbean, Brazil. I lived there for a while, did multiple trips there, East Africa, Europe. And so you see each group is unique and individual, kind of has its own DNA. But some of the things that remain are the power of when a group gels and comes together and pulls us, lifts us all higher. And we all have an opportunity to grow in that way, leadership included. And so that maybe is what's most exciting. Croatia is an amazing location that we're using here. But at the same time, we have our own built-in kind of unique group that is going to bring adventure, entertainment, relationships that's going to pull us all up and higher to the next level, which is pretty unique because, like you said, a lot of us don't have that in our everyday routine. And even when we do have it in our everyday routine in our workplaces, a lot of times that gets a little stale, right? It becomes a little stagnant. We're used to just coming in at this time, and we know that Sally's going to get lunch then, and that Jack's going to come in the office and roll around, and this is what he's going to do at this particular moment, or these are the skills he has. But when you go abroad, when you go in that travel context, when you get that group together, all bets are off, and we're forming an entirely new system and way of doing things. And that's when breakthroughs happen. And it's incredible.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's also a good point that within travel, I've known this just from my own experience, but I was reading about some research. There's a professor at Taylor's College in Malaysia, and he was talking about how travel puts our brain on kind of this hyper growth mode. And so it increases our clarity of thinking, our mental acuity, our creativity, all these things. And so if you think about someone who really wants to get their business to the next level, but is just kind of muddling it because of that uncomfortability and because of neurologically what it does to your brain, it allows for those breakthroughs. Then you mix in coaching and creativity and all that kind of stuff. And it's just this perfect recipe for these transformational breakthroughs. I think of my own kids. I was thinking about, I've sent my own kids on study abroad, 5 different experiences. I've paid for all those myself. And how all 3 of the kids, when you ask them about their college experience, it's not the time on campus. I mean, they had some great times on campus, but their biggest growth happened when they combined curriculum and classroom experience in study abroad with the learning and the brain on hyper mode in that study abroad experience. And so for us, this isn't just typical travel. This is travel with coaching, consulting, collaborating, all those things that are just going to make this experience so incredible. So
yeah.
I am super pumped about this. I can't even tell you.
Yeah, it reminds me. I had an appointment with a client, a session with a client last week, and she was talking about how she went on vacation, and it was drivable. I'm in Pennsylvania. She actually drove up to Niagara Falls with her family, and she gets up there, and once she gets there, she goes down to start her car the next morning, and it won't start. And so this is a client who before, I think something like this would have totally derailed her. The rest of the trip would have been ruined, kind of thing. But what she did was she had, and this is again one of those things that we're going to be digging in on deep, which is this notion of accountability, or excuse me, not accountability, adaptiveness and adaptability. And so when she was able to adapt to the situation, she totally pivoted, and it became like the best vacation ever. They ended up on this jet boat ride, and they're flying 50 miles an hour through the rapids. And this is something she would have never done. It wasn't on the original plan, but they had a couple of extra days now all of a sudden, and she adapted. And what do you know? This turns into the best trip ever for the family. And I said to her, would this have happened, 2 years ago? Would you have done the same thing? She said, no. And then I said, okay, now interesting. Now, her business is crushing it now, by the way. So she took kind of what she had learned being adaptable in business and brought it to her personal life. And I said, so what'd you learn from this again? How did you reinforce that? And what are you going to take back into your business? And right there on the spot, she said, oh, now I know I need to do this, this, and this. And these were like, again, pushing herself into that uncomfortable place. And so you see that, again, in real time, I saw the way that travel can really motivate us and take us, like you said, into that new mental space and provide that opportunity that she would have never had otherwise. So that was, nothing fills my cup more than hearing a success story like that. That was awesome.
Yeah, that makes sense. It is just so impactful, and so just, it's the good stuff of life, It really is.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's life that's really life. Right? It's not the normal doldrums of, oh, I do this and I do this. Well, you can choose to make, even no matter what your business is, you can choose to make it more engaging to you. You can choose to go for greater heights, seek greater heights. You can choose to make it more fulfilling, but you have to take those steps.
Right. Wanted to ask you a little bit about this, because when you talk about choosing, I think we've both had the experience where we've had good clients and bad clients. Tell me what makes a bad client.
The number one thing, you're really teeing me up here. The number one thing that makes a bad client is the unwillingness to engage, the unwillingness to get even just a little bit uncomfortable, right? The unwillingness to say, hey, there might be something more. I've had clients where they say, and this is a red flag that exemplifies or illustrates what I'm talking about. Sometimes I've had a business owner or a company that will say, hey, this person over here, they need coaching, right?
Wow.
Right. And so they come in and they're doing one like, oh, I need coaching, huh? And so they're not in it, right? They're not engaged. They don't want to be there. They've been voluntold. And so nothing good comes from that, right? I got to work my tail off at that point to try to engage them. And they still have to, they're the ultimate decider of that. They're still going to have to decide whether they want to actually fully engage to get the results. And so that, you're right, that is the number one red flag I'm looking for when it comes to a client, is just the willingness to engage and get uncomfortable, which again is great in terms of what we're talking about for trips like this. When we talk about experiences like this, you are engaged. We are fully immersed with one another. Not that you won't have your downtime, of course, but you never know when those breakthroughs are going to happen, right? It might, you said earlier, it might be like when we're taking an early morning run and just getting a little exercise in. It might be a stroll through an ancient town or city. It might be when you're out on a sea kayak. It could be anywhere. But when you have that immersion with one another, your wheels are constantly turning, right? and you're able to find those breakthrough moments.
Yeah. So really the engagement is the key piece, both in terms of, well, to me, there's two, I guess, hard measurements of engagement. One is investment of time and one is investment of money. And when you think about this epic executive experience, people are investing a week of their time and also a significant amount of money. So therefore, they want to get bang for their buck. And we want to provide an incredible amount of value. And I mean, that's where I think it all kind of, you've got all these things really working together, which is exciting.
Yeah.
So
well, I know you're the same. I'm driven by results, right? That's part of who I am. And so we're not setting this up as happy fun time in Croatia. We're setting this up to be with experiences that we know will create breakthroughs for people that will be applicable to wherever they're at. And so, and that's part of why I and we offer essentially money back guarantee, right? If you invest this amount of money, we know it's a significant amount. If you invest this money, we expect you to have breakthroughs, and we expect that to drive your bottom line in some really healthy and profitable ways. And if you don't see that, we'll sit down and write you a check, because that's how confident we are in this kind of experience and what we can bring to it.
Well, and it also gives us an insight into you that we don't have during a traditional. I mean, you're going to give us your polished best version of yourself. Whereas if we're stretching you and you're jet lagged and you're on this challenge where you've got to hit this point and then get up to a zip line and go across this canyon and then dig into a museum, all these things. And let's say you have an epic meltdown, right? It's all too much. This isn't a great pitch for the program.
It sounds like the South Rim of the Grand Canyon to me.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like 34 miles in, this epic meltdown. But that is the clarifying moment, that maybe the breakthrough, that is why maybe in traditional things where you give your polished version of yourself, a coach is able to then break through that and say, okay, I see this. I love the passion, but we've got to channel it. We've got to do that. So that, wow, super exciting.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
really is.
We're going to see great things. I'm confident.
Yeah. You also, in terms of engagement, I've worked in hotels and hospitality the last 3 years, kind of this undercover boss thing, running big events. And what I see is a tremendous amount of investment by the organization, the business, the corporation. They are, a lot of them have an event planner that's working on this all year. They're flying everybody in. They're picking up everybody's hotel rooms. They're paying for, meeting space. They're paying for keynote speakers, all of these things. But when you break it down, and I see this right on the inside, on any given moment, only about 80% of the people are actually in those conference rooms. So 20% are out going to the bathroom or taking a call, or they slept in and just didn't feel like coming down for the 8 a.m. morning session. And so you're down to 80%. And then of those people, if you look out, about half of them are scrolling on their phone. So you think about engagement and you think, okay, they're pouring millions of dollars into this. We had a company recently spent over $500,000 just on AV alone for this conference. And you got a 40% engagement level, and you've lost all that productive work time because you've pulled them out of the home office or the field or wherever they came from. Versus this type of experience where you're coming because you're bought in, you are engaged from the get-go, from the jump, from the moment you get off that plane, you're all in. That's like a 180 flip. And I think, not to look too far ahead, because I know we're getting off the ground here with Croatia, but I see this as the future of how we do, in corporations, kind of that personal and team development. I see a future where we're taking our C-suite folks and sending them to an experience in Brazil, and we're taking our, R&D team. You talk about getting creative, send them somewhere that challenges them. And then those ideas start flowing. They start seeing things in a different cultural context, and all of a sudden P&G's got their next breakthrough. So I see that as the future of kind of events for corporations rather than these traditional ballrooms in a hotel for 3 nights and keynotes and all that kind of stuff. So
I know which one I'd rather go to.
Yeah, I am 100% with you on that. That is very true. So as we wrap up today, as you're thinking about just either businesses who are thinking about investing in this for a key employee, or whether you're thinking about an individual maybe who's the self-business owner, what would you say to them as to why they should do this, why this is going to drive value for them in their life?
Yeah, I'd start with it's worth every nickel you'll spend. Again, we see this becoming a directly positive experience on their business. We see it as being something where, and even thinking about specific situations, right? You've got somebody who they've kind of plateaued revenue, right? And they're just looking for the breakthrough. But they feel stuck, right? They're not sure where to go next. And so that's where conventional coaching could help, but something like this is going to accelerate that. Like you say, pouring gas on the fire, right? Like it is going to be an accelerant that you're able to give in a situation like this. So whether you're plateaued or whether it's even in decline, right? Or you're thinking about like, what am I really doing here? Is this really what I'm all about? And if not, how do you pivot? And that doesn't mean scrapping it necessarily. It could mean a significant pivot in your business that becomes something else that's better than you even imagined, right? I'm a big believer in the best is yet to come. And so I think that to get people who are in those moments of, is this really it? Is this all this is meant to be? Like maybe you've achieved some modest success, but now it's really time to think about, am I in or not? This is the moment for you. Let's be in, both feet in. Let's go.
All in. I love it. That is the whole philosophy, whole mindset with this. So
yep.
All in. So if folks want to get involved, want to go to Croatia, want to just super pump their life, their business, and achieve that high ROI, really high ROI on that investment, I would say go to superpumped.com, click on the link. You can sign up. If you want to book a consultation with Greg or I just to discuss it more about your specific context, go to gdlinsight.com or superpumped.com. And we are super excited to talk to you, super excited to meet you, and very super excited to go to Croatia with you.
Let's do it.
Let's go. Let's do it. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for joining me today on the Super Pumped Business Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, I have 2 quick next steps for you. First, subscribe or follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. And second, jump on over to superpumped.com to find out all the incredible ways we can help you launch your Super Pumped business. Keep well, and I'll see you next time.